More and more women over the age of 40, 50 and even 60 are deciding to compete in bodybuilding shows. And I've competed in bodybuilding shows in my 50s and around menopause. Is it even different than competing at any other time in your life? Can you do it? Is it going to be harder? I'm going to explore all of that in this video and talk about the things that you need to consider and how to approach bikini prep when you're around menopause. Hello fam, and welcome to my channel. My name's Melissa Neal, and this channel is all about helping you, if you're a woman over 40 or like me over 50, get in amazing shape. And one of the ultimate ways that you can do this is competing in bodybuilding shows, bikini shows. There are lots of different categories. I'm going to talk about this in this video. So bikini category is probably one of the most well-known categories, but there are others. And for me, when I was competing, it was the ultimate goal that I had was to get on stage in a sparkly bikini. And I'm going to talk first about the things that you need to consider before you're going to go down the road of bodybuilding shows and bikini prep. What you first need to consider is, what is your motivation? If your motivation is just to actually lose weight, get in shape, transform your body, that probably isn't the right kind of motivation. So if you're doing it and you found that you just can't get in shape any other way, and that's the only way that you're going to be able to do it, it's the wrong motivation for getting on stage. If, however, like me, you're thinking you'd love to take your strength training and weightlifting and bodybuilding journey to the next level and take the ultimate test, then I think you're in the right frame of mind for competing in shows, because it is one of the hardest things that you are ever going to do in your entire life. And it certainly was for me. I've done challenges before, I've done half marathons. They paled into insignificance when you compare it to competing in bikini and bodybuilding shows, because it's going to be the ultimate test of you mentally, physically. It's going to make you angry, it's going to make you cry, it's going to bring out all sorts of emotions, and you're going to be physically pushed to your absolute limit. You're going to be mentally pushed to your absolute limit and beyond your limit, beyond where you thought you could ever go. So in order to do that, you do have to do it for the right reasons. Another thing that you're going to have to consider, because you're around the time of menopause, is, do you have the energy? And in all honesty, since I did my last competition at age 54, I'm now 56, so it was round about 2 years ago, I don't feel that I have the energy levels to get through competition prep. And that's because I actually went through menopause at the time that I did my last competition prep. I got really sick after doing competition prep, so I had 2 viruses. One of them was coronavirus. It just really took it out of me physically, and until quite recently, I would say I don't feel that I had the right kind of energy to be able to put myself through that process. Now, as it happens, I've actually since then gone on hormone replacement therapy. There's been a lot of toing and froing to get my dosage to the right point, and I'm probably just about hitting it now where I feel okay and I feel like I've got enough energy. So that's how you need to feel. And if you have a lack of energy now, believe you me, when you start going on through competition prep, it's going to get even worse. So that is a massive consideration. The other considerations are, do you have the right mindset? Because you're going to have to make a lot of sacrifices. Can you have the discipline around food? Because we have to be highly disciplined. You're going to have to eat set food, set meals. Some of them you're probably not going to like, and you're going to have to stick within a certain limit when it comes to food, and you're going to be massively hungry. And so you've got to think to yourself, do you have the right mindset to eat like that, but also deliver on your training when you're completely fatigued? And you have to have an enormous amount of time to fit in the training. Towards the end, you're probably going to find that you're training twice a day. So how are you going to fit that in? Do you have the right support networks? That's really important. So when I was first going on this journey, I was a single woman, kind of newly into a relationship. I have children. It's like, do you have the right support networks in place that are going to pick up maybe the jobs that you do now? What's it like at your work? Do you have the right work environment where they're going to allow you the time that you need to fit in your training, and where you're going to have a lot of mental focus on that competition prep? So once you've decided you are going to go ahead and enter into your first bikini competition, the next thing that you're going to have to think about is, how much time do you need? Where are you now with your physique? Be honest with yourself. Do you need to put on some muscle? Are you obese? Have you got a large amount of body fat to lose? You need to give yourself time. So it's no good thinking to yourself, well, I've seen this competition, I've got 12 weeks, I want to enter that competition. If it's your first show, you're going to need a lot more time. I would say 6 to 12 months for most women, because you're probably going to need to put on a bit of muscle unless you've been doing a lot of strength training already. I'd been doing 2 years solid of strength training before I even entered in competitions. So it's really important that you're honest with yourself about where your physique is now. If you don't really know, it's probably worth approaching a coach. So that's the second thing I would say, is like, hire yourself a competition coach. If you're trying to do this on your own and it's your first competition, it's going to be really, really difficult, and I will explain why. First of all, now I talked at the start about categories. You may not know which category to enter, and actually you may not know until quite near the show which category you're suitable for. If you don't have a great deal of muscle on you, the chances are that you're going to be needing to enter into a category called Bikini, and there are so many different federations in the USA, in the UK, and in the other parts of the world. I can't really talk about all the federations, but different federations have different requirements for what they consider is the right physique for each category. So you kind of need to research that. But the first stage, which is kind of like the beach ready look, is Bikini, and that generally is smaller and softer and less muscular than other categories. Then there's sometimes called a category called fitness. That's what I competed in. I did compete in the early days in Bikini, but quickly moved on to fitness because I got too muscular. Then there's a category called wellness, where your lower body is very, very well developed, and that sort of takes quite significant training to achieve that. And the same with, there's another category called figure, which is much more muscular. And if you're doing this all naturally like I did, the chances are you're not going to get to figure until you've had a chance to build up a significant amount of muscle. The same with wellness. You do need to give yourself time to build up the muscle mass, and I would absolutely recommend that you do this naturally. I don't agree with performance enhancing drugs, but at this stage in life in particular, it can really mess with your health. So that's when it comes back to, you are going to need time for preparation, and that's where hiring a coach, hiring a specialist bikini prep coach can really help you with that. Although I do coaching, I don't do specialist bikini prep coach. So what I would recommend you do is have a research around, ask people, go online, and then actually interview 3 different coaches to get an idea of what they're like, and also speak to the women that have been coached by them. And I would say that really you're probably going to be looking for somebody that's actually had experience of competition prep with older women, because it is a little bit different, and I'm going to talk about some of the differences in this video. As well as a bikini prep coach, it's a really good idea if you start posing practice as soon as you've made that decision to compete in bodybuilding shows. You cannot start posing practice too early, and I would say if you've never done it before, it's a really good idea to hire yourself a posing coach. So there is an investment, and that's the next thing I'm going to talk about, is the investment. It's actually going to cost you thousands of dollars, thousands of euros, thousands of pounds if you're going to do this properly. So you do need to have a budget set aside. Now, different coaches charge different fees, so you do need to look and ask about the fee structure when you're approaching a coach and approaching a posing coach. But you've also got to think about the food you're eating. There's an investment in that. It's generally more expensive than standard food when you're thinking about bikini prep. There's supplements that you may need to invest in. You're going to have to buy a bikini for the show. You're going to need a tan on show day. You're going to need makeup on show day, and it's very expensive to enter competitions. That in itself will cost hundreds of pounds, and it's quite a good idea if you're going to do one show that you actually do a season of shows, so you don't just do one show and then leave it at that. While you're in shape, it's a good idea to do several shows, but there is an expense to doing that. So that's the other consideration, is budget. My next tip is to network with like-minded people, and that's other women or men, but preferably women that go through competitions. And I've interviewed some great people for this channel. A lady called Io, who lost a massive amount of weight, over 100 pounds, then decided to compete in bikini shows. There's Renee Landers that I've interviewed for this channel, and there's also Chef Maria. So I know all of those people and a bunch of other people that I network with that are all in my age category. So they kind of have all the same problems, and you can talk about all the issues and problems that you have with those like-minded people, because the thing about it is, when you're in competition prep, there's a lot of detail, and it's really boring for other people unless they go through the same process, and it can be a really lonely place. As a menopausal woman, you're going to have particular problems that other people don't have. You might have issues where you're taking longer to build muscle, you're taking longer to drop body fat, you're finding that you're getting more fatigued, and so younger women are not going to be going through that. And so talking to other women who are in your age category is going to really help. So now I'm going to talk about mindset, and this is the most important thing. You need to be equipped with the right mindset when you're going into this process, because as I said at the start, it's one of the hardest things that you can ever do in your entire life, and it's going to bring out a lot of emotion. Now, the first tip I've got about this is not to look online at other people that you're competing against. So although I said network, don't look online at other people's competition prep, like particularly somewhere like Instagram. People tend to post a lot on that, and it can really mess with your head if you look at other competitors. You don't want to be focusing on them. You want to actually be focusing on yourself, because you can't control them and what they they do, and some people that might look fantastic on the competition prep don't actually deliver when it comes to the day. They may not actually even turn up for the show anyway. There's absolutely no point in looking at other people, because focusing on your own prep, your own posing practice, that's where the focus needs to be, because you need to be the best that you can be. And although you go on stage and you get compared to other people, you can't control them. You can only control yourself. Next, when it comes to prep and mindset, and I learned this from one of my competition coaches, and that is focus on the process. So it's really important that although you normally have to check in every week with measurements, photos, weight, that kind of thing, it's important to not get too caught up in how you're progressing and how you're getting on that week. Let your coach do that. That's what you've paid them to do. They are worrying about what you look like. What you need to worry about is whether you're delivering on the process. So that's things like your meal prep, eating correctly, getting all your workouts in, making sure you're getting enough sleep. Those are important, and that's what it's important to focus on during competition prep, and obviously your posing practice. Now, my one final tip on mindset is you cannot, especially when it's your first show, expect to go in and get placed. If you do, that's a bonus, but what you should be doing is working towards the best that you can be, and not expecting, just because you've worked hard, just because you've eaten the right food and you've worked hard, that you are going to place in that show. Because what you've got to remember is every other woman has worked really hard like you have to get there. That doesn't earn you the right to get a placing in the show. And I've seen a lot of women really angry, really upset, crying and all sorts of things because they've gone in and they haven't achieved what they hoped they were going to achieve. So you need to sort of set yourself up for that. The way that I see it is, I am going to be the best that I can be, and when I get there, anything can happen. If I put myself in the right position, anything can happen, but it's not necessarily going to go the way that you want it to go. And some people can assume that if you're competing in over 40s and over 50s categories that it's easier, and believe you me, it's not. The standard is really high. It's getting higher, because if you think about it, some women that competed in their 30s or their 20s even, they're coming up now to over 40s categories, and so it's getting more and more competitive, and the standard is getting much higher because some of these women have been at it for years and years and years. So never assume that you are going to get a placing just because you've worked very hard. It takes a lot more. They're not just looking at your physique. Please remember that. A lot of shows, some of the shows I go to, you're judged on your makeup, your tan, your hair, your overall stage presence, your posing. 80% of it sometimes is going to be about your posing. So you could have a fantastic physique, but if you get there and you're not posing well, you're just not going to do well. So there's so much to think about. But after all that, if you feel that you are in the right place and you really want to do this, and you've got this burning urge to put yourself through one of the biggest challenges that you've ever done in your entire life, I would wholly support you in doing that. And you know, I watched another YouTuber who is Paul Revelia, and I've actually done an interview with him, and I watched a video where he was encouraging older people to compete, and that gave me the confidence to compete. So absolutely, you can do it, and you know, you can be really successful. You can actually kind of get a bug for it and want to do it again and again and again, and you can be really fantastic at it when you're older. So if you feel you are in the right mindset, take on board what I've said in this video and go for it, and please let me know how you get on.